really.
Cool. Are we all here? Kick off. Okay. Yeah, so two topics, starting off with the first one. So from Nova's side, we switched from root wrap to privsep. Got most of that done about 5 or 6 cycles ago. And but since then, we're still having to carry around root wrap files. And the sole reason for that is OS Brick. I think OS VIF always used privsep, and Nova obviously has switched now, so it's OS Brick is the sole remaining holdout. There's some to-dos around how we've done privsep in Nova, in that we have fairly generic entry points. There was a recently reported bug against this that was initially reported as a vulnerability and then just released as a hardening improvement. But the basic infrastructure is kind of done. I have a couple of outstanding patches against OS Brick to start migrating the various connectors from root wrap to privsep. And basically I need reviews and input on whether the direction that I've taken is the correct one. I've tried to learn from what we've done in Nova and minimize making like kind of generic entry points. So there's no, we'll say, remove file entry point. That is just, gives you pseudo rights to remove any file on the disk. You're only allowed to remove specific files, give a silly example, stuff like that. So I have 3 patches linked there, and then I have a couple of more patches, some of them kind of work in progress or incomplete, that I haven't touched in a while because I was just continually rebasing them without any attention. So firstly, is this something that the Cinder team is interested in doing? I don't know if you're using privsep internally or if you're still using root wrap. And then secondly, if it is, do I need to do anything to basically get attention on this? And thirdly, if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
So I've looked over this stuff a little bit here and there that you've submitted, and I think the idea is right.
Yeah, it's just tedious to review, unfortunately. It's tedious to migrate, and then it's tedious to review. But it is a one and done kind of thing. Everything is migrated across, and hopefully that it'll never have to be touched again. And for the most part, I'm hoping I'll be able to do it on a connector by connector basis. The only exceptions to that are, I think, the SCSI. A couple of the SCSI drivers are dependent on each other, or they use, we'll say, similar util style commands, and therefore they have to be migrated separately. And one big area that I have noticed is tests. Some of the connectors are lacking tests. I've gone and had to add them, or the tests that are there are kind of janky and I've reworked them significantly. So that's led to a bit more of a diff than I would like. It makes the reviews a little bit harder. On the flip side, though, like it's probably easier when you're reviewing these to approach them as wholly new tests than to look at a diff. Just look at the file as it is new. Yeah, I'm thinking it's mostly just reviews that I need for this, and I'm happy to do the work, tedious as it is, but there's no use in doing it if I'm just going to have to face it. That's all I have on that.
So I think in the past we have agreed that this would be a good idea, even on the security issue. I discussed that with the team at that time, and that yeah, I don't have very in-depth knowledge about this, but I think the team agreed it would be good to do these changes.
Yeah, so if it would be helpful, if the issue is the fact that you don't want to review the block of code, I'm happy to obviously let somebody else author the patches and review them with my Oslo privsep hat on. I can only obviously +1 them, but that way then it's not just a purely review exercise, but I don't think that's probably much of an improvement. It's still going to be tedious. It's just whether it's tedious to write the code or tedious to review the code.
Well, I'll definitely help with reviewing this stuff because I've kind of been half reviewing them anyway and just not spending enough time to actually finish it. So I'm happy to help on that part.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get at least one or two of the connectors migrated across. We'll say whatever, probably, I actually don't even know what connectors are in there. Whatever the most used ones would be. There's LVM for the dev stack stuff, and then if there's a Ceph connector, an RBD connector, migrate those across. If we got the two of those, we'd already be on, you'd be getting 90% of deployments probably, or 70% of deployments. 90% of Red Hat deployments anyway, I'm guessing.
So what's going on with this 791.271 review? It says something about encryption this, encryption that.
One
Is
second.
that the right number? The very first one on the Etherpad.
Yeah, so what's happened there is there's these two. This is kind of pre-work, effectively. There's two classes and they're dependent on each other. And I wanted to migrate them separately. I wanted to migrate the Luke's connector with all the encryption stuff, or the Luke's encryptor stuff, without having to do the legacy crypt setup thing, which I think is deprecated and is supposed to be removed, but there's some cleanup code to be added to Nova. I have, this thing, which I'll stick it in the Etherpad if I can find the line. This review. So I have this review that proposed removing the crypt setup encryptor, and then another one that proposed dropping support for out of tree encryptors. But Lee Yarwood reviewed them 2 years ago, and he said that there was some cleanup work or some background database checks that had to be added to Nova before we could actually remove those things, just for real old deployments that had been migrated up through multiple versions. And until that work was there, we couldn't actually remove these encryptors. So basically, I'm separating them, and then I'm going to leave the legacy stuff off to one side. I'm not going to bother migrating that to privsep because it's a waste of time, because the thing's supposed to be removed. So, precursor work.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the explanation. I'm tempted to volunteer myself to review it too, but given how I review it, I'm kind of loath to promise it for sure. Also, I don't have a +2 yet.
I'll take +1s as well. Just eyes. I basically want eyes on to make sure I haven't done anything silly.
If there are enough +1 reviews as well, like I could approve the change, like based on my review as well, like adding to what others have reviewed.
Yeah, +1 from somebody with just done a decent review is as valuable.
Yeah, so I guess we agree that this is something we would like to do, and thanks, Stephen, for taking up the responsibility for this migration. Uh, okay, I've added a action item to this one. Like, I think from our end, the least we can do is like review those changes. Is there anything else related to this topic? Anyone would like to ask any questions or doubts?
One question that I would have is that thing I said earlier about the most used connectors. I assume the areas to focus on would be LVM and Ceph initially in terms of bang for buck. Or would you prefer that I focused on a lesser used connector that's tested in CI somewhere to kind of test the idea out?
So, are we planning to also change the iSCSI and the fiber channel connectors?
Yeah, well, the plan would be to change everything that's in OSBrick eventually. But obviously, I don't want to do that in one big, massive, unreviewable change, step by step.
Okay. Yeah, I think the iSCSI and fiber channel one are the most used in production, even the RBD one. So those should be good.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Gorka has any points regarding the NVMe one.
Not really. I think most of the NVMe one I tried to do with the refactoring a lot, at least some things to remove from the call to execute and do with privsep, a bunch of things, but yeah, not much to say about it. And I think probably it's good to, instead of leaving the mostly used connectors for later, it's probably better to do it earlier, so that if we break something, we'll know soon and we will be forced to review it quickly. The fixes.
I agree. Yeah.
Because usually what happens with this kind of patches is that what we have is already working. So we are less motivated to just review them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, even the OSBrick release is the first one, like the non-client library. So would be good to get these changes so we have some idea like if something breaks later. Yeah, sounds good then. So should we move to the next topic?
Yeah, so I discussed this with the Glance team yesterday, and I'm discussing it with the Nova team later today. So firstly, this isn't going to happen in Oslo DB because there's, I won't go into that now in a sec, but there's there's service related differences. Different services use soft delete in different ways. So it's not something that we'll probably want to make configurable on a global basis. It should be implemented in like a service specific manner, ideally though in a similar manner or compatible manner between different services that want to do this. But in Nova's case, soft delete has been around obviously since the beginning, and we mostly use it for like introspect or auditing purposes. So an instance has disappeared from like server list or whatever, and you want to figure out what's happened to it, you can go and check the database and find your soft deleted records in there. And I must double check this. I don't know if we have a foreign key constraint or not, but things like the instance actions or instance server events, those things are obviously persisted then as long as the server record stays around, and I think there's probably a foreign key constraint and they'll be deleted once you delete the instance record. So yeah, mostly auditing purposes. But the issue with that is obviously if you're in a deployment where you're spawning and destroying instances on a fairly regular basis, you can end up with databases with hundreds of thousands or millions of rows plus all the child rows in other tables, and there's performance implications to doing that. So the way that Nova handles this is we don't expose the ability to purge rows directly from your main tables. Instead, we have shadow tables, and you have to do an archive, which means copying things from your main tables into your shadow tables. And then you can purge your shadow tables, which is basically like a truncate operation. I think different services do this differently. I'm pretty sure Ironic just allows you to truncate from the main database, but that is an additional step that you have to remember to do if you're using something like OO Director, say, OSB Director and OO, then that usually deploys cron scripts in recent versions that will make sure that this stuff happens under the hood. But we've had issues where those cron scripts were either not running, or there were bugs, or they weren't running, which meant the tables were filling up, and our customers were seeing performance issues. So the suggestion here is to make soft delete configurable where it makes sense. So for something like Nova, if you decide that you don't actually need the auditability, you have other ways of recording information about created servers, destroyed servers, stuff like that, persisting server, like Nova compute logs, this kind of thing, then you can go in, modify your nova.conf on your Nova conductor, and disable soft delete. And that when that happens, deleting calls to soft delete will actually do like a proper hard delete under the hood. So we're going to explore doing that in Nova. I don't know if we're actually going to do it yet. I did discuss it with Glance, and Glance say that they're using soft delete differently. They use it as a security feature because Glance apparently allows you to set a UUID when you're creating an image, specify a UUID, and their soft deleted records are basically their way of preventing people creating an image with the same UUID as a recently deleted image. I think what the security flaw, well, that term would be not man in the middle or something, but yeah, basically you think you're downloading something and you're actually getting something else. So they don't want to, they want soft delete enabled in almost all cases because of this potential security issue. So that means that they're not going to do it, but I think Nova will probably end up doing something like this just because it's caused issues down the line. So my question for Cinder is whether this is something that would benefit you guys also, configurable soft delete, because as far as I'm aware, you use soft delete in a couple of models. And if so, whether it's worth collaborating with Nova around a common design. Obviously, if it doesn't benefit you, then it's a moot point. So first question, what do you use soft delete for? Is it actually used for a particular reason? Is it used for auditing purposes or something? Or is it just a carryover from the split with Nova or something else?
I don't think we use the soft deleted records for much. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I haven't seen any usage of the soft deleted rows in any of our APIs or to get any information.
The only place where
Yeah.
we use there are a couple of places where we have code to work around the fact that we use self-delete, but we don't use it. I mean, there are cases where we recover the information. We were trying, for example, to manage a volume again, or to, I think it's restore from backup, or I remember there are some operations that had trouble with the fact that there was already a record anyway, so they had to work around there being a soft deleted one, but we don't use it for anything.
So the reason that I proposed it as configurable in Nova is basically to give us time for people to shout at us and tell us, no, this is really important, or these are the things that we need for you to be able to delete it, as opposed to deleting the feature and then it lands in customers' hands in 3 years' time or whenever they upgrade, and suddenly, these records aren't being created anymore, and then they're screaming at us and there's nothing we can do about it because it's been 3 years. Hopefully not 3 years, but basically gives us time to kind of test out the idea and decide if this is the path that we want to go down long term, and if it is, what additional stuff. For example, do we want to make unbind server events or instance events and persist those long term, so you have like an auditing trail, so you won't have the instance record, but you'll have a list of events against the now deleted instance, that kind of thing. But yeah, it gives us a little bit of wiggle room. The other option, of course, is just to disable it entirely, delete everything that's left in the databases, and then eventually delete any shadow tables if you have those things. Which I don't know if you do. I don't recall seeing them in when I was working on the migrations, so I don't think you do.
So one question I had, Cinder doesn't use the soft deleted rows, but could it be the deployers if they want these records for auditing purpose? Because I remember, I think maybe it was Vex host or some place where the operators wanted these soft deleted rows, like I think the admins need some data out of them. So is it also like something that deployers use for some auditing purpose?
Yeah, so like I said, that's the main reason that I think they've been kept around in Nova. And again, the reason for making it a configurable option is we have for now, until we decide to implement whatever additional features, we're giving people a way out of having these soft deleted records that they have to go and manage, even though they don't want them. And then people that want to keep them around, they can until future feature arrives. So yeah, I suspect that there probably are operators using them. How many and whether those use cases are really necessary, I don't know. But based on the mailing list already, even I saw a couple of people pipe up saying, no, we've used these. And like Mel Witt said that she recalled using it one time to debug an internal escalation in Nova. So there are some use cases, but of course there are alternative mechanisms like a persistent action record, for example, that you might keep for a long time, and that just says that the server instance was created and when the volume was created, what actions were done in it at a high level, and then when it was deleted, for example. You have some audit.
Yeah, we are currently looking into that, because I don't know if Walter is today around. Doesn't look like it. But yeah, we are looking into kind of having a history of operations that happen on resources on a different table that doesn't affect any of the normal operations, but from an operator point of view, and from a developer point of view, when you go into a customer case, it is useful to know what happened with the volume, the whole history. Did they try to live migrate? Did they try? Because sometimes it's no longer in the logs, or sometimes it's really hard to figure out where it is. So yeah, we are looking into being able to store a history of actions on resources.
Ultimately, I think that's where Nova will end up as well. I think that's a better strategy, like not to be keeping these like all the information that's mostly irrelevant. All that you want to know usually is like what happened to thing and when was it deleted? Was it created? What happened to it while it was in existence? And then when was it deleted? Again, for auditing purposes. And if you can have like a task log or something, that seems like a much better strategy. So I suspect once this is bedded in for a while, we'll eventually remove it and eventually remove soft delete and just tell people start using the instance action or instance event log.
Yep, that sounds good.
So I'm getting the impression that I didn't see too many nodding heads when I was describing the hassle that we've had with a couple of bugs downstream, mostly around like tables that have grown out like massive because of soft deleted records. Have you seen that as an issue? Has that been reported as an issue, or is soft delete generally something you can ignore?
I don't think I've seen it, but then again, probably with Shift on a stack or Kubernetes on OpenStack, that could be an even more a thing that would happen more often. Because for VMs, they are not created and destroyed so much, but for containers that use PVCs, that's probably a more frequent thing to do. So that will increase the number of records in the database. But even if there were any customer case, we would just tell them, so clean it up. This is the Cinder manage command to clean your database. Add a cron job. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, that's pretty much what OOO like Director does now, at least for Nova, and I guess probably for Cinder as well. Yeah, the main reason for it in Nova is because we've had so many of these things. It is a way we're removing a potential foot gun, or providing the opportunity to remove a foot gun. So if that foot gun isn't as obvious in Cinder,
I would like to say that it's not significant, the fact that we haven't heard any customer complaining about it, because they don't seem to complain much about this kind of thing for Cinder. Just to give you an idea, Cinder, there are a couple of resources, I think volumes, for example, that did not have indexing in Cinder. And nobody complained about the listing. And so it's something that should have also been affected. A couple of listing operations that have no indexes. And nobody ever complained.
Oh, interesting. People complain to Nova about that stuff the whole time. You have nicer customers, evidently.
Or
quieter customers.
Their problems.
Yeah.
So in downstream, I think I've seen in PSI where I was debugging one issue they were having. So they had like thousands of rows, like maybe around 1 million rows, because it is used very widely. And they were facing I think they were suspecting the maybe the health check or something was being slow because of those records. But as Gorka mentioned, like we have pretty simple way to clean those records up with the manage command.
So on this, the change itself is quite slow, or quite small, I should say, not slow. It's about, I think in Nova, it's about 10 lines maybe, plus a load of tests. It's easy for me to propose it, but whether it's actually useful or it's just an additional knob that isn't needed, that's a question, I guess, that's really up to you. I could submit like a minor spec, or you could just say yes, yay or nay, whatever suits. We'll probably, like I said, we'll discuss it in Nova, and assuming I get sign off there, we'll probably do it there, and then eventually remove soft delete once we've decided how we're going to best preserve the ability of operators to audit stuff. If you're exploring something similar in Cinder, it might make sense to wait until that feature is there. I don't know. Whatever suits you guys.
So by default, we will be soft deleting, right?
But I don't know. Did you? So Nova has a no more soft delete policy since I think Mataka. So everything that's in like our API database, instead of like that's running on the API servers instead of like the main database, none of those have soft delete enabled. So things like flavors and that kind of thing that live in the API database, when they're deleted, they're gone. And anything new that any new records we've added to the main database don't have soft delete in them. So this is only really the old stuff from like pre-Mataka, pre-Cells v2 that has it. I don't know if you're still doing that in Cinder, or we'll say if every one of your new tables or new OVO models or whatever is, or OVO objects is using soft delete. I didn't actually check.
I don't think we have changed anything with the new database code. Like I added a table for default volume types, and I set it to the similar pattern, like using soft deletes as before, but not sure about other things. Maybe I've missed some reviews, but I think we are keeping the same in the new changes as well.
Yeah, Cinder base. Looking at it, the Cinder base model that everything else inherits from has deleted at and deleted take columns. So everything is soft delete by default. Or has the ability to do soft delete, where you're actually calling the like dot soft delete. Yeah. So the dot delete method is soft deleting by default. But yeah, soft delete is everywhere in Cinder at the moment.
And if I understood correctly, it could be configurable on the service level, like you said, like it is not going to be implemented on the Oslo DB side, but on a service specific level, right?
Exactly, yeah. This is a service level decision. The Cinder team decides whether they want to do this or not. We're not going to do it at also because there's too much nuances between how each project does it. I should probably reply to the mailing list and make that clear.
Okay. So I think as long as it's configurable and according to me, like in my opinion, we give the same default as we had before. It is like it doesn't change anything. So it is, yeah, I don't have any issues with that. I'm not sure about the rest of the team if because I can't even see anyone, so I'm not sure.
Everyone's nodding enthusiastically and saying, absolutely, please do this for us. I think I see signs promising me free beer as well, actually. Yeah, okay. I'll submit a patch against Cinder with this, and obviously that'll have to be reviewed. So if there is any additional feedback or concerns, that's as good a place as any to raise it. And like I said, it's a pretty small piece of code to actually enable this in the simple config option. So not that complicated to review, so we can focus on the implications of the feature as opposed to the code.
Yeah, that that sounds great. I've added these action items, and yeah, thanks Stephen for implementing everything. Really thank you for the DB series as well. The
Now
Alembic
what?
migration, the database change series. Like first you implemented the Alembic migrations and then the legacy engine Prasad thing. So those were really helpful for the Cinder team. Thanks for implementing those.
No worries. Happy to help. If that's everything, I might jump back into the Nova room. Feel free to give me a shout if you've any other questions.
Yeah, thanks again for joining.
Well, thank you very much. See you later.
Stefan, see ya.
Okay, so we don't have any more topics for today, and I think tomorrow's agenda is also kind of light. We don't have much topics left. We already discussed the major ones. So, does anyone have something to discuss right now, or we can end early today? I will just stop sharing so I can see everyone. Okay, I will take that as a no. So I will just stop the recording.